Claudia, are you there?
I'm there. Hi from Potsdam, Germany.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for the invitation.
So the stage is all yours.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thanks to all of you, the whole team, for putting together that Global Design Thinking Summit. I think it's a meaningful way of exchanging our international experiences throughout the last months, years, when it comes to making actually an innovation happen within the field of education. And I'm really happy that I, on behalf of the HPI School of Design Thinking, can share with you a few learnings that we specifically have been gathering throughout the last 6 months in terms of completely redesigning our programs that we do run in design thinking. But before I'm gonna get into the nearby past, I'd like to give you a bit of an overview about where we are, where I am also luckily today. So the School of Design Thinking at the HPI at the University of Potsdam has been founded 13 years ago. So we started our academic programs in 2007. And since then also have been developing a lot of new approaches and have also been creating a lot of new deep dives into what we now call design thinking. The programs we offer are actually not limited to the students who are already enrolled at the University of Potsdam or also at our Hasso-Plattner Institute that has a focus on IT software systems engineering. All the programs we run have been from its very beginning open to anybody from anywhere. So meaning every student studying somewhere on planet Earth was eligible to apply for our programs. The constraint that we had in play for many, many years was actually the place. You see on that first slide also our studio space. Our studio spaces can cater approximately 40 participants per studio. That actually limited us in terms of accepting students per year to around 300 that we can not only teach in design thinking, but with whom we actually together learn about new ways of how to innovate. And if I talk about we, that's not just me as being the academic director, that's also a team of approximately 50 active design thinking coaches, faculty members from our university, but also practitioners and researchers in the field of innovation and design thinking with whom we constantly work. So you already heard from Alex, with whom we also have been working closely together in the previous talk, how they have been implementing design thinking, and they have been also following a bit our experiences. So that's the place where we are. We do offer programs that are short programs starting from 3 to 5 days up to a full semester that actually consists of 4 months, where it's about really developing innovative solutions together with project partners, either from the field of business, from not-for-profit sector, but also now very importantly from the public administration. So that's a bit about the Institute. Now a bit what I'd love to talk about, it already has been mentioning in terms of, I want to share with you a bit of the conceptual underpinnings we have been putting into our program design. And I hope that also will inspire you a bit, the ones who are listening right now. So if you're about to either think about changing the way you run your academic programs or also your human resource trainings within your organizations, that might be something that can help as a blueprint to also help to develop new programs. And then, of course, I also want to talk about the disruptive times. Second part of my talk will be directly to how we actually did reinvent the D-School completely on the scratch when we had to go into a lockdown and no longer on-site teaching were allowed. Because place, and you will see that in that talk, matters a lot in design thinking as an educational approach. But first of all, I want to start with actually what we have been designing as our key definition in terms of when it comes to implement design thinking as a methodology. We'll like to keep it in such a way that it can be applied to a broad variety of problems, no matter if it's a business problem, if it's a social innovation problem, if it's an organizational problem, or maybe even a product problem. So that's something we consider as extremely helpful, as it's a mindset built around the human being, built around the life people are living in, where we as future innovators, specifically our students, are going to make these inventions, are going to make these innovation happen that hopefully will lead to a purposeful design new solution that is also about to make an impact. So that's actually our understanding about design thinking. And this broad approach, what you also see is you have to actually adapt it to specific categories. But one key thought, and that always stays with us, is actually focusing on the human being. What we have been doing throughout the whole process is actually always dealing also with this type of problems that we typically call wicked problems. So therefore, also when it came to the pandemic and the disruptive time, you could already have thought about like, why design thinking is a great way to actually get prepared to that, because typically what we're like looking at are problems that we haven't tackled so far and solutions that we haven't found yet. But one point that always remains with us is us, as I said, right, the human being. But what the main difference actually in design thinking is, and just want to highlight that one, it's not a user-centric approach. So you're not approaching the user, the buyer of a product, the consumer of a service in terms of asking them what do they want. It's actually about trying to understand who they are as people. So the human-centered approach is built around empathy, gaining empathy for other people you are designing for, and people that you also start then integrating into your design process. And I think that's a key difference that design thinking makes, also in terms of teaching and educating. It's not just like growing people within what they are already good at doing so, but it's also growing them in terms of understanding other people's needs, desires, wants, in order to be able to cater for those when it comes then to developing new solutions. The development of the methodology that we have been undergoing so far, also here at the D School, can be a bit described as this. So design thinking originally, when the term was coined specifically also by IDEO, Tom Kelly and David Kelly, it was building mainly around the way product designers were designing products. And this was made accessible to non-designers, non-product designers. But actually what changes is once you start applying these type of practices to other areas in life. So the design thinking methodology actually varies already a lot once you start applying it to services, because it's no longer the object that you're going to hold in your hand. That's, by the way, my pen. I can describe it. I can tell you how it feels when I hold it in my hand. About an experience, if I go, for example, to a restaurant, that's already different. It's a journey. So it starts maybe with my friends making the decision together with me if we're going to go out for dinner. Then it's about the booking. How can I actually book that table? It's the arrival at the restaurant, etc. So that's already a customer journey that we have. And that already gives us many, many different opportunities to design for. So that's actually already the second layer where design thinking got applied to. And what we now have been taking design thinking to is actually more into the field of systems design and future design. That's actually depicted with the parts you see of that squared circle above services. Because design thinking is not just for making stuff better and for making service offerings better. It can be also used to not only ignite in people, but also to create new business designs. And also to change the way you run your business right now. So if you're, for example, a car manufacturer, you can start thinking about, like, why can't I become an organization that's actually offering mobility? And then car sharing becomes the core business model. So that's for us also a way to think about design thinking, how to apply it on a systems level, how to also integrate the stakeholders within the organization whom you have to take along, or also the stakeholders when it comes to organizational change in a system. When you say, like, we want to design for pupils in our classes, it's also then thinking about the systems level. How can we actually change the way stakeholders interact when it comes to the system of education? So that brings into play, for example, parents, teachers, school directors, but also the federal state that actually sets the frame for education as a whole. And last but not least, it's also designing for a future we want to live in. We are here at the D School working a lot with the Sustainable Development Goals in terms of making them also our value frame and saying, hey, we want to also look at future designs with design thinking as a methodology that will enable us to envision and design for the future we want to live in. So how does, for example, the workplace of the future look like? How does public transportation of the future look like? And that's where we have been actually taking design thinking to. So it has been changing from that person-object relation, person-person relation that actually is built around products and services, to a systems level, saying, looking at the stakeholders and looking at the factors who actually define the system we are in. And finally, also then thinking about how we can design for a strategic future we want to live in. So that's kind of the conceptual underpinning that we took into design thinking to further elaborate the methodology and also to adapt it to the specific problem categories. Because tool set have to be like adapted and have to be looking different when it comes to either design for a specific object up to the future we want to live in. So that's our like key conceptual underpinning. Our second key conceptual underpinning is actually what do we want to achieve with our programs. As I said at the very beginning, the programs on purpose are open to anybody to apply because we do believe that creativity, critical thinking, collaboration is not limited to specific disciplines who are already somehow good at it. The designers, the media producers, the storytellers amongst us, maybe even the business people. I have a business background, so I can talk about these people maybe in such a way. But how can we achieve that? Because it's actually not built into the curricula of the standalone disciplines. And our approach here is to say, like, okay, we'll offer an interdisciplinary program open to really all disciplines. Typically, students at the HPID school have either already finished their bachelor or in their master's program, maybe even already in their academic track in order to build their PhD and also academic career together. So therefore, our key focus in here is really on this 21st century learning skills, saying how can we actually train people with their domain background in an additional toolkit that's called design thinking, so that they can take it back again into their disciplines in order to make them grow as future innovators, change makers, and also entrepreneurs. So that's what we're focusing on. So we'll really try to actually get the things in action. So therefore, for us, when it comes to designing our programs, we do focus somehow on a competency model where we select two things are really important for us. It's about trying to teach people in terms of collaborating all together. As I said, like we do work with a team of coaches, we do work with a team of program leads who design the program all together. So we teach team with teams, we learn with teams. We want to actually enable them to learn how to create new value that comes from actually innovation. But we also want to enable them to be able to take, after they have been in our programs, responsibility to take that on by themselves. And that can, for example, mean I'll change the way I work as a business manager within my business unit. It can also mean that instead of taking a career in natural science, I'm going to move to the management side. It can also mean that the idea I had in the back of my head really becomes my entrepreneurial think, and I really try that out. So that's what we're focusing on, and we're focusing on this in our programs in such a way that it's actually built on problem-based learning and project-based learning, where we do, with the action, already start with the stuff we also share with our participants to bring this to life to a real project. We work, as I said at the beginning, with a variety of project partners, from small to medium-sized companies to international organizations, from startups to family-owned companies that have been on the market for several hundreds of years. If it comes, for example, to very classical products that you all may have heard of. And that's what we really want to bring, first of all, to life. So how can we, first of all, create design doing? And then within the program, also reflect on the learnings. How good were the outcomes? How good was the output? But also, how good was the process? How good were we as teams? How good was I as an individual? In terms of anticipation of where can I grow into? So the design thinking programs for us are also meant programs for growth in terms of individual development. So therefore, when it comes to our design thinking programs, there is not just the process knowledge that we're going to build in there. Say, like, we're going to teach you in design thinking toolkits, because there are many, many toolkits out there. The actually art of design thinking when it comes to applying it also later on in your life is to pick the right thing at the right point in time. So therefore, that's a key component, but it's also surrounded by 3 other components. And one is really about knowledge, about innovation, about teamwork, about leadership, about creativity, so really understand where this comes from. And besides process and knowledge about the discipline, we also want to design programs that do offer opportunities for growth, as I already said. So it's the personal development that we want to foster on a cognitive level. Once you start working with people from different disciplines, you have to also understand different categories, different concepts. You have to combine them. You may not have heard about those before. And we also want to develop an approach that actually helps you to shape yourself as a person in terms of self-confidence, creative confidence, and more specifically also self-efficacy. And that's tied into a team-based approach because we never walk alone. We always walk and work in teams in terms of how to develop yourself also as not just a team member, but also as a team leader who also leads their team in a different way, with shared leadership, with empathic leadership, instead of delegate and control. So how do you actually balance and handle team conflicts? How do you actually sense inequalities in a team in terms of who speaks out loud and who doesn't say anything and maybe is no longer kind of really committed to the team? So that's what we really try to teach and also to develop by ourselves, by also doing a lot of co-design when it comes to our programs with our team of coaches, but also with our participants. And therefore, we're also happy when we just discovered a few weeks ago that the World Economic Forum has been identifying the top 10 skills that are going to be needed in a few years from now. I think they're already needed today and have been also maybe needed yesterday, that are really also focusing on the aspects I have been already talking about. Being a critical thinker, being somebody who actually addresses complex problems, where you don't know actually where the root cause of the problem is, where you also develop creativity and leadership skills in order to be able to achieve innovations. And you see that you can actually say that's also a very real description of what has been shown to you on the slide before. So that's our conceptual underpinning. That's built in any of our design thinking programs. Sometimes it's more leaning towards one specific aspect. So in our short programs, for example, we do focus on the process. In our specialized programs, we focus, for example, on team and leadership, or also entrepreneurial thinking. So there are a couple of special programs that you can also design for that. Yeah, and the key design activity. I'm with the D School since several years as an academic lead. I started in 2013, but have been working with the D School prior to that already as a coach. I've seen a lot of program iterations, have done a lot of program iterations, but in March this year, we actually had to change the way completely we teach and learn, and actually also spend our time together. Because what we have been building our design thinking program around was not just about the team component and the tools we use within the design thinking process. It was also heavily built around the space. The space as being also the main differentiator in terms of a seminar room, in terms of a lecture hall, that we have been given up completely. So you see it also a bit behind me. So we have whiteboards, we have team tables, we have a lot of prototyping material around. But with the lockdown we actually went into in March, we had to completely redesign our programs, absolutely, because the space was no longer there. Universities were closed. We were all put into the situation that we literally 3 weeks till the semester start to prepare for a completely virtual program. First reaction might have been, okay, just give it up. Design thinking has so much been built around the random encounters, the planned encounters, the teamwork on site, that once this is gone, it might not work as an educational approach. However, and that's what we discovered and also then tried out already from April on, that was our summer semester start, is yes, it can work, but it has to be designed differently. We also have been offering online courses prior to COVID, but these online courses, they had a specific quality. They were in the category of the so-called MOOCs, massive open online courses, where you as an educator in a team of educators, and Uli Meinberg, the director of the DSCO, and myself, we, for example, did one about design thinking just a few months ago, by the end of the last year, where you actually provide content to a various group of people who, whenever they have time, will watch your video, will do the assignment. They maybe do this alone or in teams. But this is not what we had in mind when it actually came to take our programs into that online world, or to add that into the online world. So what we did here is actually giving us this as a design challenge, and this also giving us as a question to come up with ideas. So how can we actually design virtual educational programs in design thinking that will build on the advantages of live coaching and working together? Because this is what we saw also made us unique. It was the close encounter with experts from a variety of fields in your team, but also on the coaches level and also on our program team. And it was also making these encounters happen in cross-pollinating between teams. This is what we really wanted to keep. And at the beginning, we thought, oh, we're just going to go virtual. Design thinking goes online. That is, for example, also my working place. I have been using over the last years less and less tools on my desk. So I just ended up to have one laptop, and as you also can see, I have it now next to me, a beautiful time timer to set the time for me. Well, that didn't work, obviously, and we didn't try it. So what we really did try when it came to redesign our programs was to think about a way how we can allow for flexibilities within the teamwork, as it's no longer like this one course hours assigned to when design thinking is going to happen during a curriculum here at the HPID school. Because also our programs also have been like a day long, or have been 5 days long. You can't spend 5 days for a global design thinking workshop in front of the screen from 9 to 5 or even longer. So therefore we had to build a lot of flexibility into the program. We had also to develop a lot of new tools, and we also had obviously to train all our people in these specific capabilities, because nobody is natural born virtual design thinking coach, or nobody is actually born as a virtual coach ever. So what we literally did is to explore a lot of tools, and now I've been also creating a mix that I also love to share with you. So when it now comes to our design thinking courses, we have been deciding to use an educational platform. In our case, it's the Open HPI platform, where we do offer course content. This is where we have been producing lots of short videos, are providing readings, also giving reflective tasks with the individual participants. So that's actually where we have our content base. And it's also our method base that's accessible to everyone who's actually at the D-School from the very beginning of the course. And then we use as a team working platform, and a platform also for our projects, in this case, a digital platform called Miro, that actually helps us really to design a program structure that already can be made accessible also to team members, so they can see what's coming. That's the content and the teamwork side. And for the communication, we obviously use also a video platform to meet with teams virtually. So teamwork is still to a certain degree synchronized, but there's also a lot of flexible built-in time that we do allow our coaches and teams to work on projects and to discuss questions whenever they want. That also requires a lot from us, also from our educators, because you have to make yourself also available more often and sometimes more irregularly than you were used to when it comes to coaching. And then obviously also as a communication platform, in this sense, we have that messaging in there. Besides designing all the content outline and designing all the activities now for the virtual world, there was one key thought that actually was very prominent with all of us, because we do consider creating a D-School program also not only as a new way of learning and innovating altogether within educational program, but we also consider it as a safe place to grow and to try out. So therefore, the concept of psychological safety that has been also introduced by Amy Edmondson and also Tim Clark. Fearless organization is one of the recommendations I can give from Amy Edmondson. Is actually trying to create a safe space, or a space in which a human being, when it comes to learning, feels included, feels safe to learn, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge the status quo. So therefore, that was a key challenge for us, because if you just like have a virtual program where even like the whole program comes together, we typically have between 30 and 60 people in a program together. You all know Zoom calls, you now also see me, right? It's somewhere here, the upper chest, and then above your head, and the hands you'll never see because people are just typing. So therefore, there are a lot of lesser nonverbal clues, and there are a lot of lesser ways also from a coach's perspective to direct people, to help them give a hint. With your hand, you can point. On a virtual screen, we only have your cursor that you can move around. So therefore, we have been also playing around with new stuff in terms of trying to create new virtual zones. This is, for example, the planet of one of our currently running programs, where each and every one individually is displaying what he's good at, what he likes. Hangout rooms where you can actually leave the best read that you have been discovering within the last week and so, and also meet and hang out. Team lounges where people are also indicating to other teams within our program who they actually are, what they do, and if we can start interacting with them, because they might be in a different breakout room. So that was one key part. Second part is also from us as educators, you have to feel in love with a camera. Instead of looking in other people's eyes, you just look at the lens of a camera. And that's something that I think was also very, very difficult for some of our coaches. And leading the program in terms of creating that safe space also does not only involve having more than one screen, but also making use of different means of creating that space and holding that space together by, for example, playing music. Because the only thing that actually unites us when we're together in a virtual classroom is audio. I mean, video, sometimes we can't see everybody if it's a bigger group, more than 25. So how can you do that? So therefore, also this creating of environments for us with also playlists we have been creating has become very important. And then also for teamwork, so how you can then create those people coming together and establishing team practices that also specifically includes, once you imagine a student always being at home or in the dorm, how can you also change positions and places while being like together for 4 or 5 hours and doing your teamwork together. So this is where we are right now, and this is where I am also now nearly to the end of my talk. Last thing I'd like to stress out, so like how do we think to continue with our programs? We do actually plan to continue, not only because this semester and also the most probably next upcoming summer semester, so winter and summer semester in a year from now, will be still under these regulations. So for us, it won't make sense to, again, open the school in terms of saying everybody internationally can apply and come, because still travel restrictions are into play. But we think there are lots of advantages that we have learned from working digitally together, specifically when it comes to teamwork and projects. So we're thinking about further developing into a hybrid or high flex space environment, where also on-site work is again going to be possible and also be built into the program, but also parts of your team can be abroad. And this is it for my side. I hope that I still have time to take 1 or 2 questions. Otherwise, I'm also always open to continue the conversation after my talk. But first of all, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Claudia. Now I have a couple of questions from the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna ask them first in Spanish and then I'm gonna translate them for you, okay?
Thank you.
Claudia, ¿dirías que la metodología del design thinking ha tenido avances, mejoras o desarrollos en los últimos años? ¿Y cuáles serían? Do you think that the design thinking methodology has had advances, improvements, or developments in recent years? And what would they be?
Okay, so yes, there was a lot of advances, as I already tried to, at least on a meta level, try to address, is that we have been advancing into a different category of problems. So specifically thinking about systems change. So we also now do a lot of projects around, for example, education, specifically working together with the public administration. So there has been, in particular for Europe or also Germany, a problem area where people never thought about doing it differently. So therefore, I think that's already kind of a key advancement. And the advancement is also not just on the process level. I think we are all now like pretty well equipped with lots of tools, but also seeing how we can advance people on the team performance and also team leadership level. These were for me also specifically the advancement, and also where we thought like this is what we've trained people for. Design thinking is not an end in itself. It's the mean towards an end, and the end is actually organizational change, cultural change of an organization, systems change. This is actually where we want to make an impact. Therefore, these are for me the key thoughts I would put in there.
Awesome. Saludos desde Sibiu, Rumania, para Claudia y para todos. ¿Pueden explicar el ABP como base para el modelo de aprendizaje de Design Thinking? ¿Hay algún investigador en HBI que aborde eso? Estoy haciendo lo mismo con mi doctorado. Claudia, there's someone that says hi from Sibiu, Romania. And the question is, can you elaborate on PBL as the base of this design thinking learning model? Is there a researcher in HPI tackling that? Is anyone, the researcher in HPI tackling that?
Yes, there are a few. So
his PhD.
Yeah, so there are a few. We also have a design thinking research program together with Stanford University. And within this field, there's also a group of, I think at least now 3 or maybe even 4 PhD candidates who specifically focus on the learning models that are equivalent to be applied in design thinking. And I think the main difference, or like the main differentiation I would draw between the general approach of problem-based learning that has been out there for a while and design thinking, that it actually has those 2 other components, and that's actually the innovation space. That's also the mental space, not just the physical space I'm talking about, and the teams component. That's far more important in terms of trying to work together with people with diverse backgrounds, different stereotypes, assumptions about a problem, but also different areas of expertise. And that's something that actually hasn't been, at least from my understanding, that might be wrong, so apologies for that, for problem-based learning. Plus that also we'd love to take the problem-based learning also more into a project-based learning. So when you start working together with an organization for real, it's not just finding the best solution for the problem, but also finding the best way of making the implementation happen. And that's for me kind of the key thing that we also have been adding from design thinking perspectives to that problem-based learning approach in general.
Thank you. And the last question. ¿Cómo abordar la seguridad psicológica, soluciones, en empresas que, dada su posición en el mercado, no quieren o no permiten nuevos cambios, cerrando las puertas a nuevas ideas dentro de la organización? How to approach psychologically safety solutions in companies that, given their market position, do not want or do not allow new changes, closing the door to new ideas within the organization.
That's a good one. When I started to talk about psychological safety, that was more meant to create a learning environment, specifically also in an educational setting. For the application, or like looking at what's happening within an organization, I would even take this a step further. So specifically, then it's not just about psychological safety of somebody, like expressing their thoughts, doubts, and also like challenging the status quo. But it's really about trying to give a team, a part of the organization, virtually, literally a playground to explore. And that's something that has to be kind of given. So you need the buy-in either of your top management, or at least your leadership above, so that they at least let you play around with it. And the point that's mentioned in the question, I also see as a huge problem. Typically in organizations, and we also saw this now under the situation we're in the last 6 months, when the organization is still pretty stable. So market position is quite good. So typically in the times of crisis, design thinking or these type of things aren't quite often allowed. But we also try to change it and say, like, this is actually the time where you have to disrupt, because you're already disrupted. Your organization is at stake, where you have to allow yourself like an opportunity to play around with solutions. So therefore, we also, when we work with organizations, we try also then to think about not just like only the big picture, but what could be hacks. So what can be smaller problems where we can actually, by implementing a new solution, already start changing our market position, and not just have the long-term perspective on that change product that might need 2 to 3 years in order to get it like implemented and also rolled out. And it's a tough cookie. And I think if you have solved that, you're going to be a great innovation consultant.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for being here with us today.
Thank you too. And good luck for the rest of the conference. I'm going to stay tuned.
Bye-bye.